Where is XL? I want to shoot his ass. There. It was worth it.
How the fuck did that miss? How the fuck did that miss? My whole fucking screen was consistent out of your face.
How did you miss?
I don't
Somebody
know.
needs to take marksman training again.
Hit both behind each other. That's not possible. The thing does not penetrate a fucking human skull. It penetrates, but not double penetrate. Or penetrate. What?
I mean, it definitely penetrated the air.
Fucking head is crippled or still wounded. Oh, wounded. Okay.
Alright. We'll wait for a few of the late joiners. But, just as a little disclaimer here, most of what you're going to be getting in terms of squad leadership requires you to actually step up and get experience on the field. So, there's nothing I could say do fucking instill into your minds that would prepare you for actually stepping up and, you know, giving us a fucking grade A performance, alright? In order to be the best that you can be, you need to have some sort of experience on the field as a squad leader. What I'm going to teach you here today is more or less decision making as a squad lead. And I'll go over some different, very, very common scenarios and how to deal with them. But other than that, most of squad leading is going to be down to decision making. So the easiest way to cope with that is being more comfortable with the decisions that you make and knowing about the different things that you have available and are doing. Okay, is Angel here?
Just come
There.
Oh, there you are. Okay. So, let's get started. So, main thing you guys need to know is, you guys can, I'll just do this as a disclaimer. You guys can plan and plan and plan and plan. At the beginning, in the middle, at the end of ops. But, really, the best plans usually are made on the spot. So it's okay to have a basic idea of what you're going to do, but always leave the specifics for on the field, because you can never truly plan for everything that happens on the field. Too much shit goes on. Especially when there's a Zeus actively reacting to whatever you do. There's no way to predict what movements the enemy will make, you know, what will happen, how many troops you'll have left after a certain amount of time. There's just nothing you can do about that. So take the planning before, during, and after the missions with a grain of salt, alright? Because they are definitely not the way to make sure things go absolutely smoothly. All they can do is become a preemptive measure, and preemptive measures don't always work. Okay? So, to get us started, I'm going to be going over attack first, and then I'll be going over a little bit more defensive tactics, and then I'll be going over basic discipline and general squad leadership at the end. Alright? So, to start off with, attacking is generally what we're doing in terms of ops. Most of what you do is attacking a certain point. Whether it be attacking a town, attacking a fortified position, attacking a hill, or even patrolling towns can be considered an offensive measure. So, how do you go about this? Well, there's a few ways of going about it. One way is to keep momentum. Whenever you're attacking, you always keep momentum. If you're not moving and you're attacking, then something is sincerely wrong. Because most of what happens on the offensive side relies heavily on movement. So, this is exponentially so when artillery indirect fire comes into the mix. You'll notice sometimes on Liru ops or whatever, when you stay in a position too long, you get mortared the fuck out. So, the entire way to avoid that is to make sure you guys keep moving, because what the mortars do when you guys stay in a place too long is it scatters you. That's bad. Not only that, but you also have the thoughts of all of the troops around you as well. So, you know, it gets pretty hard to slog through a battle if, you know, you're not getting any progress done, and you're sitting there shooting shit. You know, you're killing shit left and right, but nothing's getting done. It doesn't feel like you're making any progress, and that creates a huge problem in the squad breaking up. That's when you'll see people running off on their own, doing their own thing, dying for stupid reasons, getting fucking fragged, or whatever. Alright? So, always keep moving, especially on the attacking end, because as soon as you stop moving, you start losing momentum. And when that momentum is gone, that's when ops start to fail. And as a squad leader, it is your job to make sure that everybody has somewhere to move to. You always need to have a direction to move. So if it's patrolling a town, then the direction should be generally marked out. That's where planning actually comes into play, by marking routes. However, don't mark routes incredibly far in advance. Otherwise, you risk having people getting confused by old lines that change based on the different reactions of the enemy. So, say if you have a patrol marked through towns, or marked through a town, you take contact along that patrol, so you decide to maneuver around it. That is a lot easier to do if you only marked, say, half the town. And, you know, it's a lot easier to only remark half the town than it is to remark the whole town based on where you ended up, if that makes sense. Also, something huge is keep things simple. The more complex your plan is, it may seem really cool. It may seem like the best idea out there, but complex plans are doomed to fail. Because just like machinery and engineering, you have too many moving parts, the more chance that those moving parts will fail. And then to fix it is going to be very, very complicated. So, for your sake, and the sake of everybody around you, keep your plans simple. There's no need to, you know, fucking write an essay in terms of a briefing. I've had ops where the entire briefing was, we go here, kill shit, this squad's there, that squad's there, and we're good. I mean, I've conducted Friday ops where I've basically drawn straight lines telling squads to go there. Which brings me to another point. As a squad leader, you have a huge amount of leniency when it comes to leading your squad. Because I know there's a misconception about squad leads and commanders and, you know, just the general chain of command, where the squad lead only does what the commander says. And that's not always true, because, there is things that the commander doesn't know that the squad leader does. Like how fucked the squad is. Obviously, as a squad leader, you're responsible for keeping tabs on everybody in your squad. And you can designate team leaders to help divide that. But overall, as a squad leader, you are also responsible for the well-being of your squad. Like if your commander tells you to move into that town and draws you a line, that line should be taken as a guideline rather than the exact truth. Because obviously it's hard to, as a commander, to accurately look and gain an understanding for everybody on the field, especially when there's upwards of 20 to 30 guys on the field. Alright? So, as a squad leader, you know things that the commander doesn't. So, you should react accordingly. This also means that the commander makes more of the overarching decisions, but should not be relied upon to make the small decisions. In terms of assaulting, what this means is your commander should not be the one to point out when you should, or, what positions to take out first in an open engagement. So, as a squad leader, unless told otherwise, it is up to you to prioritize the targets that are most dangerous to your squad. In terms of attacking, take out emplacements that are looking at your squad. You can assume other squads are going to do the same. Also, always take out high priority targets for your squad first. Because if you focus on the other team, and the other team is focused on you, and half of you get fucked from each squad, none of you are effective. If you work to preserve your own squad, and other squads are working to preserve their squads, at the end of the day, the commander is there to make sure that, hey, these squads are working together, and if one squad doesn't do their job to preserve their squad, then you are still a full squad that can go and support them. That is when you start worrying about other squads. Otherwise, generally what you need to do is, in an attacking maneuver...
Oh my gosh.
What?
Interesting. Alright, so, if you'll all look at Nagara real quick, it should be fairly
That's
close
the
to our
plane.
position.
Stop looking at the blown up plane. Do what Ambi says.
So, if you look at Nagara, I'll go over some basic, overarching town assault goals. Or plans, whatever. So, immediately, what you might think is straight down the road. Easy, right? Wrong. Usually what happens in town assaults is, roads are there for a reason, right? So you want to drive down them. However, most of the times, where are enemy emplacements going to be pointed at?
Road.
So, would it make sense to impale yourselves on enemy defenses, or go someplace that the enemies wouldn't have emplacements? Trick
Such
question,
as?
I know. So, some things in Nagara. Obviously, there's a huge ass hill here. I'll mark it in blue, so it's easier. So there's a huge ass hill here. Obviously, assaulting down there would be unexpected. Plus, you have forest, or rather, foliage cover.
A canyon
Then-
right next to it.
Then, you have the canyon that literally leads straight into Nagara.
The canyon on the north
And-
side.
Is there?
The one where the forest is in, dude.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, that one. You also have that one. But yeah, you have a ton of different options, even from one angle. So, what you can do is avoid those fucking death tunnels that are the roads, and instead... No, I'm not getting that, Floppy. So instead of going down the death tunnel that is the road, you can instead go around the road. Where the emplacements more than likely will not be located, or at least there will be less of them. So, restricting yourselves to roads is entirely a decision made on you, and depending on what kind of assets you have, you may choose different terrain, such as going up on the mountain. Probably isn't the best idea if you have heavy armor, because heavy armor takes a very long time to get up big hills. So,
Light armor does too.
yeah, light armor does too, but any tracked vehicle has a very hard time going up hills. Any heavy vehicle, really. But
Any
so they
vehicle
should...
now, basically.
Well, except the MRZR. MRZR doesn't give a fuck. Anyways, so those might be restricted to flatter areas. Like the Bradley might be restricted to a little bit flatter areas than, you know, the giant fucking mountain. Whereas the Humvee might be a little bit more versatile in getting up hills and shit, right? This also means that you can pick the shit accordingly. So, if you're going to be assaulting over hills, because, say, there's only roads that aren't on mountains, you can, instead of taking a Bradley, take Humvees or MRAPs or something of that nature, so that you have the mobility you need along with the firepower granted by either like a Mark 19 or an M2 mounted on a Humvee. Alright? So,
Right.
also on assaulting, usually it's, you know, very, very easy to think fortifications and just run at them until you die. Because that's generally what happens. Because whenever you engage a fortification from where it's meant to be engaged from, i.e. the way the statics are facing, you're more than likely going to get fucked. And even if you do take it out, there is going to be a significant amount of casualties. So, to avoid that, think of instead taking fortifications and emplacements from an angle they're not supposed to be firing from. That means, like, implementing hitting it not from a road. Because, like I said, pretty much in terms of towns, pretty much all emplacements are going to be looking down roads. So, when you see an emplacement, don't rush towards it. Instead, rush from the back or from the side, anywhere where the guns are not aimed at you immediately.
Particularly what MB is trying to say here is don't be commanding officer Harrington. Boy Scout Harrington, how you want to call him.
In any case, another point for attacking is, I will say this, and I will say this from the bottom of my heart. Do not build trenches. Ever. Whenever you hear the word attack, the word trench should never come to mind. I am
World
sick
War
of
I.
seeing that. So, whenever you're assaulting, don't immediately think of trench. Okay?
Question.
Yeah.
What about when you have wounded?
What?
When you
Wounded.
have wounded.
The casualties during an assault.
Yeah, casualties.
Usually, casualties should be dealt with after engagements. So, what you can do is you can make small engagements, then break engagement, and tend to your wounded, provide security. That way, you can fulfill an engagement, you can succeed in an engagement, then deal with your wounded. Now that depends on how combat effective you are. Like, if you lose 90% of the squad, you need to break engagement without winning the engagement, because you got fucked. But that doesn't mean that you need to pull all of your squad to do so. That just means that you need to divide up. So, while, say, 50% of your squad is providing security and medicing, the other half can be at least plinking the targets out from your front line. So, this is kind of a tricky part because you need to balance the security of your medical forces with your attacking force. Now, this is when you would say to the other squad, hey, by the way, we're treating our people here, and if you guys are working closely together, then they can bring their wounded there as well, and you can pretty much eliminate the need for as much security as you would if the two squads were using separate positions. Alright?
Yep.
So, the establishment of, like, forwards, medical centers, or field hospitals, that kind of thing, will greatly reduce the amount of people you'll need on security. And also, you know, you can pick your positions strategically, like, bring them in houses and stuff to choke point the enemy, and thus you need less security. But you should never completely leave your wounded, and you should never completely stop unless you get absolutely fucked. Alright? So, that's a little bit of a tricky part in assaulting, because you can never have the same field hospital for very long. So you constantly need to be changing it, and it needs to be updated with every wave of wounded. Because usually engagements come in waves. Because, you know, you move linearly through a town, and you only engage the people that you can see from that linear angle. So, you know, you can kind of... Don't be afraid to slow down, but never stop moving, if that makes sense. So you can slow down an engagement, meaning, you know, maybe make 2 or 3 houses in a couple of minutes, rather than, you know, taking out the block in a couple of minutes. But you still need to be making progress, otherwise, you know, you're never going to get finished with it.
What Envy is basically talking around is, if you assault something, you basically assault a garrison position, right? They are fortified, they have hunkered down, they know the area. You always are in a disadvantage if you're assaulting. As soon as you fuck Envy, as soon as you lose your momentum, is it a fucking...
as soon as you lose all your momentum,
you're playing on the fucking enemy's rules, and that's basically when you start losing the op indefinitely. So
yeah,
without...
because the enemy has actual fortifications, whereas the best thing you have is trenches.
As soon as you're entrenched, you just get fucking bombarded and outmaneuvered.
Yep.
Wasn't doped in armor because of the amount of manpower that we have. The enemy will also always outnumber you.
Yep. So, another part about attacking is more of a commander type thing, but when you have multiple elements, such as 2 squads, 3 squads, whatever, it is important to think about crossfire. Like, I know a while ago there was one person that was had a very big affinity for stuff like that, if you look at Nagara again. So, like, say friendly forces were attacking from the west, and then you had the friendly forces that were attacking from the east. What happens to all the fire when those two teams are firing at the same time?
They shoot each other.
Exactly.
That's
Now,
a myth exactly as the belly cam.
What?
But
they
at the
were
very
like
least,
directly
you get some
firing at the enemy.
confusing,
Yeah,
tracers to
and
follow.
that adds a reasonable amount of complexity to what could be a relatively simple plan. Alright? So instead of doing large flanking maneuvers like that, what you can instead do is, if you want the advantage of attacking from a different angle, but don't want to deal with the crossfire, do something like that, where you're still attacking from a different angle. Let me delete this. Like, you're still attacking from a different angle, but you have less crossfire to worry about. Alright? This means that, A, your squad and friendlies will have an easier time identifying what are targets and what aren't, because the targets will be in front of them. Simple enough. Also, you'll have an easier time controlling the fire, because auto riflemen won't have to, like, guide every bullet with their hand, because obviously you run less of a risk of thwapping somebody in the face that you didn't mean to thwap. So just keep that in mind, because I know it may seem like a great idea, like, oh, they'll never expect a pincer attack, but yeah, it comes with its own problems, alright? And then, mainly, when you're attacking, you more than likely have the implementation of vehicles. Now, as a squad leader, this is sometimes the hardest thing to manage, because with the vehicles play by an entirely different set of rules. So, when you're thinking about vehicles, usually what they are meant to do is move up to a position that would be hard to get statics or something up there, and shoot down upon the enemy. Now, their advantages happen to be optics and firepower, because usually you can mount better optics and bigger guns on vehicles. This means that you get none of those advantages if you bring them into a town. Now, I know it's been said before, and it probably won't be the last time it's said, but bringing a large vehicle like Bradleys, Marshalls,
And Abrams.
That is essentially giving up the advantages of that vehicle. You are willingly giving the enemy an advantage of you not having the vehicle. So any fuck with an RPG or whatever can essentially nullify your force multiplier, which is no bueno. Alright? So, to keep these effective, what you can do is station them outside of enemy engagement and have them stay back and assist friendly forces from afar, utilizing the advanced optics of said vehicle. Like the Abrams would be great, say, across an open field in, say, a small fortified position, or right next to a rock, or something that it can hide behind for cover in case it gets engaged. Alright? Now, usually the specifics of where the tank will be placed will generally be put upon the crew. However, as a squad lead, and if a vehicle is in your command, you need to tell it generally where it needs to cover. So, you know, you need to take into account what the vehicle also has in terms of cover as well. Like, you can't expect a tank to cover you in the middle of a city from, 10 clicks out. Or, you can't expect it to cover you in the middle of fucking forest or whatever. Alright?
Right.
Alright, so, also, in Arma, vehicles happen to be really susceptible to flanking attacks. This means that whenever you use a vehicle, especially, well, basically the general rule is the heavier the vehicle, the more susceptible it is to flanking attacks. So, like a Bradley would be less susceptible to a flanking attack than, say, an Abrams, or a Humvee would be less susceptible to a flanking attack than fucking Bradley. Alright?
To be honest, a Bradley is susceptible to any kinds of attacks because the thing is shit, but...
Fair enough,
You
but
take
you
that
get my
back.
point. Like...
Fuck, they should have built a queue with... bleh.
But yeah, so... Basically, what that means is that whenever you put a vehicle on field, you need a certain amount of infantry support to go with that vehicle, because infantry is the best way to squash flanking maneuvers, because they are the least susceptible to flanking attacks when in great numbers, because there's an amazing thing called 360 security. Alright? So, when you implement a vehicle, what needs to happen is you need to have people stationed around the vehicle so that they can watch the different fields that could be flanked from. Like if you're in a town and you need to bring, say, a Bradley through town, you can have the Bradley watching the rooftops and shit that can shoot you from far away, and the infantry can look down alleyways where flanking maneuvers can happen. Alright? Now, this doesn't mean that the infantry pushes ahead and clears the alleyways ahead of the vehicle. What this means is you clear it before, you clear it while, and you clear it after a vehicle has passed. Alright? So you should have somebody watching ahead of the vehicle, somebody watching while the vehicle is crossing, and somebody watching after the vehicle is crossing to avoid any flanking maneuvers. Okay?
Quick introduction why it is that way. Those are two Abrams, okay? One from the side, one from the
Where's
front.
2A? Oh, there.
Over there. Yeah, I'm invisible. That's very smart of me to say over there. I know, but what?
Ow.
You could have just pointed.
Mop.
The side.
Can I have a AC AMV?
Ask XL.
That's
Yeah,
gonna
so-
kick off.
Ground yourself.
You might want to delete that.
Yeah,
that's
I'm
fine.
gonna go with Sean decorate.
The
I'm
ones
thinking of
that
trash.
got attacked from the side is cooking off. The one that's attacked from the front. No! Don't cook off, please don't cook off, please don't cook off.
No, that's embarrassing when it happens, isn't it?
The shot was, to be honest, very close to the fucking bullet thread, so I was
Yeah.
fearing there a little bit. Because I walked, so the launcher was still shaking. But yeah, fucking armor is... That was a fucking... As you can see here on the ground, probably, because I think the texture spawns as soon as I drop it. That
Yep.
was an M72. So a fucking 3.5 kilogram launcher just destroyed the fucking multi-million dollar, 50-ton main battle tank. So
Excellent.
Some people shit talk them 22.
Exo, can I have an ace heal?
pussy.
Give us all A seals, please.
Fine.
Because you happen to, fuck us over with an M72. Anyways, so
Back
that
next time.
is a very good demonstration of what flanking maneuvers can do to vehicles. Alright?
What American AT can do to American tanks. I'm
So,
pointing that out because, you know.
Yeah, could you have done the same shit with an RPG-26? It's
I know,
basically
I'm
the
just
same
saying, I'm
fucking
just
thing
saying.
except with another texture.
Yeah, but the site is shit though.
Yeah, the side of the
That
the side of
doesn't
the
matter
fucking
in-
RPG-26 is
that
shit.
doesn't matter in urban warfare. The
American
site
bias.
doesn't matter. In any case, you know, it's... Just know that implementing vehicles requires infantry support.
The other hand, the
Because too
fucking
many
RPG
times-
scope is better than the one of the small.
Too many times, I see vehicles going off as their own element and doing their own thing without any sort of infantry support inside of towns and inside of very close areas. So obviously this can be a problem, and it has been a problem, and as long as it happens, it will continue to be a problem. So, yeah. Remember. Infantry
5th
plus
of
vehicles
November.
equal happy.
I knew that was coming.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I couldn't resist.
So, now I'll open up to general questions about attacking, or offensive measures, rather. Any questions?
So like, how do you choose which vehicles you're gonna ask for in each mission?
Alright, so that's actually an interesting question. It depends on a few things, like the terrain, like I mentioned before. Obviously, if you're going on mountainous terrain like where we're at now, it might not be the best idea to grab a Bradley, because you won't get there in any reasonable amount of time.
So it burns fuel like a motherfucker.
Yes. So something like a MRAP or a Humvee might be a smarter choice. Also, it depends on the composition of your enemy.
And your squad.
Like if they happen to have a javelin team off in the middle of nowhere, it might not be a great idea to bring an armored convoy. Instead, it might be a better idea to bring some Humvees through some woods. Alright? So,
Yep.
it all depends on composition, terrain, and, you know, generally a whole bunch of scenarios. Like, fucking hostages, for example. If there's hostages, you generally don't want to be lighting buildings up with fucking 20mm autocannons.
Frag them for that case. MB, one question. Are
Yep.
we on 60?
Oh, I didn't have the radio set. I've just been yelling.
One quick thing. Am I on yelling? I'm now on yelling. One quick thing. Like, MB told you about fucking track.
Having problems on terrain, but let's quickly look at something like the fucking LAV or better in that case. I'm just saying that I'm on full gas right now and I'm driving 15 kilometers per hour. That's a fucking 10-degree slope. And as soon as it gets tougher, I slow down to fucking 10, maybe even 8. Like, not even most wheeled vehicles are able to fight off mountainous or even hilly terrain like Chernobyl or Turkestan.
So what's a good vehicle for these terrains?
Everything that's lighter than an M.
So,
Humvees, huh?
Humvees.
Humvees
and
yeah, so
Yep.
especially chopper in hilly terrains, because hills are cover for choppers to raise, to lower themselves behind them, and then just for an attack run, just basically pop up behind the fucking hill, get a lock on, fire that shit, and then drop behind the fucking hill again before anti-air spikes them or blows them off the air if it's fucking done anti-air, which is called battleground attacks. So, sorry, battle point attacks. So, visit Ambi's fucking chopper training, okay? Chaos is an important feature of that.
So, to put it simply, hills are cover for helicopters. Alright?
But that's a bit of a faux pas that you're saying right there, because that is all about enemy initiative. Either way, if an enemy helicopter pops up, it doesn't matter what vehicle you're in, you're fucked.
I mean, if you have AA, you're not.
Yeah, if you have AA, then, but what if you don't? I mean, the enemy
But
still
maybe
has
should
initiative
bring
on
some.
you, you're still going to take losses.
That's what
There's
war
always
is about,
support.
isn't it?
Which brings me to my next point. Defending. So, when defending, it is of the utmost importance that you utilize the advantage of defending. Which means the utilization of statics or whatever you happen to have with you at the time. And this also means stationing people in different areas based on what you're expecting. Because you have the advantage of knowing the area and being able to plan directly for way more time than the attackers have to plan. Because the attackers can see when they are in the middle of the assault, whereas you guys have the advantage of bebopping around town or your emplacements or whatever well before you guys get attacked. Or in some cases, just before you guys get attacked. But the point is, you guys have more time than the attackers do. So, utilize that. Basically, put people in positions to have supporting areas of fire for each other. Meaning, when you put people in buildings, A, don't put all of your eggs in one basket. Don't have everybody in the same building, because that's a bad idea. Have them spread out through multiple emplacements. Or, even if you have to, station a recon team or a small team outside of the actual town or area that you're defending to act as a maneuver force so you can flank the enemy. Because the best defense is a mobile one, especially one that can actually react to attacks. Because most of the time when defenses fall, it is because the defenses were too rigid, not because the defenses weren't strong enough. Okay? With defending, you need some flexibility. So having maneuver teams or counter-assault forces will work to your advantage because, again, flanking. Flanking is always good if you're the one doing the flanking. Okay? Also, in terms of using... Oh, what? What's that?
Continue.
Okay, never mind. When choosing the different positions, you need to think about what exactly you're going to be facing. If you're going to be facing armor, then picking emplacements such as small sandbag bunkers or, places where you can be bombarded by pinpoint accuracy fire, that's very obvious, is not a good idea. So when you're facing armor, shit like urban areas or places with multiple windows or balconies or whatever, that is the kind of shit that you want, because remember, vehicles can get flanked, and that is the weakness of vehicles. So you never want to take a vehicle head on, even when defending. Because, as you've seen earlier, that almost never ends well. Okay? So, when making a defense, like in a town, a better idea than stationing everybody on the outskirts of town would be to allow for heavier assets to move into town and engage them from a area where you can have a lot more room to maneuver, such as behind buildings, in between courtyards, that kind of thing. Whereas if you try to engage it from an open field, it might not be a great idea. Also, the use of these fucking things. Shit like these. Very good against armor. And you can set those up in positions that overlook open fields and shit, so that you can be more effective against armor than the armor will be against you. And also, there's an invisible man playing with the SPG-9.
Oh. Mop.
God damn it, I put in air plugs and they still didn't work.
Alright, so obviously you guys get the point with statics, because statics are always great, and they're the one advantage that you guys get, or they are a huge advantage that you guys get as defenders. Alright?
They're light, portable, and they fuck shit up. And Metis can one-shot any fucking tank from any direction. The SPG-9, well, not, it's more like a skill shot, but Metis is stupidly easy to use and devastating as in its results.
Yep. So, keep that in mind. Also, keep in mind... Sorry, I'm eating. Keep in mind that when defending, you never want to have a squad sectioned off by itself without any means of support. This means, when using buildings, especially in a town, pick buildings that have direct line of sight of each other. Because in certain scenarios, shit can get hectic. And you might need to support another team in another building. If that building is across town from you and you can't fire from a in-place position, where does that leave you? On the attack again, basically giving up the advantage of being the defender. Now that is not any way to play defense. To play defense, you need to take every advantage that being defensive gives you. Especially with actual in-placed positions. So take advantage of them. So, in-place shit like buildings that have good overwatch on each other. Where you can see the building that you're trying to support and the building that you're trying to support can see you. That way, if one of your positions get compromised, you have somebody that can actually shoot on your position rather than kissing your ass goodbye. Alright? Otherwise, for shit like bases and in-place positions, if you're doing a defensive mission, it is a good idea to always have somebody in a different area that can support you. That's why you have an off-station maneuver team or something of the like. Because then they can support you from away from the position, rather than, you know, just curling up into a little ball, or in this case, a little base, and basically just accepting your fate. Alright? So, I know the defensive was, you know, rather short, but, you know, it's defending is rather straightforward as long as you remember to make sure that you're actually reacting as a defense rather than simply staying put and accepting your fate. Okay? Any questions on defending? Okay. In that case, we'll move on to the last little bit, which is just some general leadership tips. When leading, you kind of need to do a little bit of people watching in the first bits of when you're squad leading. So, this means is you need to find out who in your squad likes to do what. So, say if you're sitting in the middle of the squad as squad leader, and you see guys running up forward, like really far forward, it might be a good idea to actually use that to your advantage and put them on points. So they will be slightly further in the squad so that they can let you know of any incoming threats before you have the entire squad get fucked. Okay? Also shit like people staying back. If people don't like to move very much and they just sit back and do their own thing, you may get one or two of those. Put them on security. Whenever the medics need security, that's who you should pick as security. Because that's what they'll do, and you'll have a higher success rate of actually having people follow your orders. Now, there's some times where this can be detrimental, and, you know, there are just cases where you just have to point it out and be like, hey, I need you to be here, otherwise you'll get fucked, or this, that, or the other thing will happen, and I'll need you to listen to me right now. And, you know, sometimes that doesn't work out, and that's just the thing for debrief. Alright? Otherwise, you know, it is never a good idea to just fucking chew people out in the middle of ops. Generally, what suffices is, you know, just telling them what they're doing wrong and telling them how to correct it, and telling them how to correct it immediately. If it's something that already happened, it happened, whatever. Then you bring it up in debrief. However, if it's something like people running ahead off on their own, that's when you'd be like, hey, I'm going to need you to stick closer to me. And leave it at that. You don't need to have like a fucking 2-hour lecture on you should stay back with me, should have done, could have done, would have done, right in the middle of an op. Because that fucking kills it. That'll kill it for you, it'll kill it for the person you're yelling at, it'll kill it for everybody in your squad. So don't do it. Just wait till debrief. That's why we have it. Okay? Also, keep in mind that you don't always need to micromanage. Generally, hopefully, the people in your squad will at least have somewhat of a brain. So, what you can do is, instead of telling them exactly where to be and exactly where to plop their feet, instead, give out general commands like, hey, I'll need suppressive fire over there, or hey, we need to move over there, or hey, we're attacking that house, or clearing that house. It doesn't need to be like, okay, you sit at the doorway, and I'll move up and clear the stairs, and you'll do this, that, and the other thing. Because that gets complicated. And what do we know about complicated things?
Break.
Fucks up.
Exactly. So, obviously, micromanaging is not a great way to go about things. Sometimes it works, but those are mainly just fluke scenarios, and a lot of times people will just get annoyed with you. Because they're like, well, I know what I'm doing, and they'll do whatever they want anyway. Okay?
Murphy.
Yeah.
So, just keep that in mind when generally squad leading because, nobody's going to listen to you to the T. They're all going to have their own minds because they're people. So, obviously, they'll have their own thought processes. What you need to do is make sure that they know what the general goal is so that they can go through relatively the same thought process as you, so that they are aware of what's going on and can avoid messing things up by making decisions as a general rifleman or whatever they are. So just make sure everybody knows what's going on, and the little bit of autonomy that you get with your squad mates can be actually used to help you. Now, as a general note, as a squad leader, I mentioned this in the first bit, but to pretty much put it bluntly, the squad lead is there to worry about his squad. Alright? So, as a squad lead, you don't have to check in on everybody else, or you don't have to make an overarching plan, only what happens with your squad. So, when a commander gives you a briefing, you need to figure out what this means for your squad. You don't need to worry about, completing overarching objectives. What you need to do is you need to complete the objectives that were given to you by your commander. So whether that be attack this position, attack that position, bomb this position, bomb that position, whatever. You need to worry about what it means for your squad, whatever the briefing is. Okay? The commander is there to enhance coordination between elements. So they are the one that combines the efforts of multiple elements. So if there's two squads, the commander is the one that makes sure they're both pointed at the same target. Okay? Now, this gets kind of complicated when the commander is unavailable. So that means, you will have to communicate with other squad leads to actually figure out how to complete the objective. Now, when asking for support, you should always do it over command net, but you don't always have to go through your commander to do so. So you don't have to ask permission to get the support of other squads, as long as you know generally where they are. So when you get communications like sit reps from other squads, even if they're directed at the commander, you can use that to request certain things from command or other squads. So, in short, you're the one with the long range, you're the one who communicates with everybody, you should know what's going on. Okay? Alright.
A round of affirmation that was.
So, is there any questions overall about squad leading or whatever? Anything that I didn't cover that you'd like me to cover?
One thing.
Oh.
If you have received your brief, well, you know what's coming to you, and if you get that brief then to your guys, you have to keep shit like that out of the fucking op. I've seen that lately, fucking role spamming in that case. For example, those are fucking marksmen here. If you, especially urban combat and shit like that, you do not need shit like that. If you do not have armor in the fucking AO. Why would you bring like 4 AT guys instead of more than one machine gunner or more grenadiers, for example? And you as a squad lead are very well authorized to just shut your people down, tell them what they should pick, because at the end, if your composition sucks and you're not able to complete the objective, nobody had fun, not just that one guy who wasn't able to snipe in that one op. Okay? So don't hesitate to just pick the gear for people and correct their choices. Do not accept shit like, oh yeah, we're attacking and better carry that fucking medium machine gun like an M240 or shit like that. Or someone bringing in a fucking Urban Orb Labua Magnum rifle. That's complete bullshit, and your job is also to keep the idiocy in your check at its limits. The idiocy in your squad at its limits.
What's wrong with an M240?
Weighs double as
Heavy.
much, the magazines weigh double as much, so in the end you can carry only half the amount of ammo, if at all half the amount of ammo.
Alright,
Good to
yeah,
know.
it's... Like I said before, you are responsible for your squad. That means pretty much everything in terms of your squad. Alright? So, from the gear that they take, from, the actions that, or the decisions that they make, you are responsible for the application of those things. So, if that means telling people to change their loadouts, or even as simple as, making sure that their auto riflemen have somebody to carry extra belts. But that kind of shit. You need to make sure that you have that kind of shit under control, so that so that you can be combat effective for as long as possible. Okay. All right. Now, is there anything else you'd like me to cover?
One should tell. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Capri.
Can you tell us like the difference in anything within squad leading? Like, let's say you have a lot of people and you separate them by two groups, which are the fire teams. How does it like differentiate from being a fire team and an actual squad leader of two teams?
That's a good question. So, the difference between having a solid squad and a divided squad is that it's pretty much the same as the difference between a commander and a squad leader. The difference is the amount of people that you have available to you, and thus the amount of people that you're responsible for. So, as a fire team lead, what you are responsible for is the people in your fire team. So it is up to them to check in with them, make sure they're alright, make sure they are effective, and keep tabs on their ammunition, keep tabs on their supplies, keep tabs on their well-being, seeing if they're down. So that is what a fire team lead does. And then a squad lead of that divided team checks in with the fire team leads so that the fire team leads can assure the squad leader that, hey, everything's A-okay, and then the squad lead gives out the overarching goal, and the fire team leads carry out that goal effectively. Or as effectively as they can with the people that they have. So, basically what you have is a closer-knit force to avoid having people left behind, or down to nobody noticing, or running out of ammunition and nobody knowing, that kind of thing. Also,
So it's a good idea to split it up.
it
Depends
depends
on how many people and stuff.
Well, it depends A, on how many people, and B, what you're doing. If you're attacking like a heavily fortified outpost, where there's not a whole lot of buildings to clear, but there's a whole lot of shit to kill, then moving as a solid element might be a better idea. Whereas if you're in an urban environment, clearing a lot of towns, breaking up, doing all this kind of shit, and it's kind of a giant clusterfuck, it's better to split up into smaller bits, such as fire teams and stuff.
Can't you like split it up but still go together, but so like people know, like you said, so people don't go down and they don't notice, so they have like a kind of battle buddies but with a few more people. You know what I'm saying?
The fire team.
Yep.
Battle buddies
So-
with extra people is a fire team.
But yeah, so it's Battle Buddies is effective up until both the Battle Buddies die. And Battle Buddies are only good for people going down, whereas fire teams can also be used as separate elements to maneuver. So that works perfect for urban scenarios where the movement isn't as linear. So you're not moving straight forward, you're moving zigzag through a bunch of buildings, if that makes sense. So the smaller the division, the easier it is to manage. Like, obviously, as a single person, you can weave through a building, no problem. But it is a different scenario to have, like, say, 3 or 4 people moving through a building, and that's why fire team leads are a thing, and that's why the battle buddy system isn't as effective as a fire team system. And in a fire team system, everybody can check in on each other, and instead of worrying about, say, like 8 or 9 or 12 people, they only have to worry about 3 or 4. Right? Alright, those are good questions. Any more?
When should you tell people to bring anti-air? Because I noticed that we rarely, if ever, bring any AA.
Alright,
Like, is it
so
important?
to answer your question, if you have extra space in a vehicle, that is part of the supplies that you make sure your squad brings. Obviously, if you're going against rebel fucks, they are less likely to have air. Whereas if you're going against a solid government force like Iraqis, Iranians, Russians, that kind of shit, you can expect to bring some anti-air, unless told otherwise by, your high command saying, hey, they probably won't have any air in the area. But, otherwise, if you're going against a solid force, it is always a good idea to take anti-air. Whereas if you're going against a rebel force, that is when you need a little bit more intel before you can make the decision to take anti-air.
And is it a good idea to not only put it in the vehicles, but have a designated anti-air person with like missiles in his backpack and shit?
Usually if your squad is working closely with the vehicles, it's rarely ever necessary to have a dedicated AA. If you're going into an AO knowing that you're going to be hit by air, like it's part of the mission, then definitely have a dedicated AA. But usually, what suffices in ops that you don't know air is going to come, instead of sacrificing something like a AT specialist or something, instead what you can do is have somebody say, you are going to be the one, if we get attacked by air, you're going to be the one to run to the vehicle, pick up the AA, and shoot at the air asset. And then, you designate a couple of people so that if one of them dies, you're not fucked. But It's, yeah, usually just putting in the vehicle should suffice in ops that you don't know whether or not there's going to be air. Okay?
Yep.
What are some things you may want to put in a vehicle, like other stuff?
Magazines,
Extra ammo,
yeah.
medical supplies, like bandages,
special equipment like ATAA, long range rifles, eventually, maybe shit like that. Basically, vehicles
Maybe a
are
javelin.
yeah,
if
that's
there's a lot of stuff.
That's what AT is, isn't it?
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Basically,
MREs.
everything you need to cover unexpected scenarios with, because vehicles have the cargo capabilities of bringing those
Lots
assets
of
with
dudes.
you. Yeah.
Okay.
Alright. Anything else? I'm gonna take that as a no. So,
Ooh, Ambi, I have an idea. I've got an
What?
idea. Ambi, listen to me. I've got an
What?
idea. I have an idea. Ambi.
what is your idea?
Permission to shoot?
Idea.
What do you want?
I was planning as an idea fairy. You shoot them when you're a squad leader.
Oh god, no. I'm gonna end it here. Please. No. No.
Just know what?
You had the problem that Grizzly wanted to teach them that. Just look and east to your certain death, because in a few seconds fucking Grub will hail down on you.
Can we talk about this transparent box?
It is only
It's
semi-transparent.
not transparent.
This is if you get close
Yeah,
enough.
semi, yeah.